Hello and welcome to Michael and Ivanka's Grand Podcast, an optimistic exploration of the doom facing mankind.
Wow.
My name's Michael Forrest.
And I'm Ivanka Magic.
This is Space Part 2.
It is. It's Space Part 2.
And we're going to continue talking about space in fact and fiction, some science and some ecology and some transportation stuff maybe. I don't know, like space is big and so is this subject. I may also touch on the anthropic principle.
Oh my goodness.
So you've got that to look forward to. Also, space feminism.
Space feminism.
Something like, well, let's go into the episode. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. Yes, I'm good, thank you. I went to London on Wednesday.
Yeah, how was that?
Somebody bought me lunch, which was very nice, and we had a good chat about life in the universe in a work-centric way. Then I went to speak to the people where I'm going to go to work in another week after next I start. And then I went to someone's leaving drinks, which was I really enjoyed it because there were lots of people there that I haven't seen for a long time, and they're all people I like and admire.
That's good.
And I did that thing where I arrived at the pub, went in, and I looked around, I couldn't see anyone, and I knew, so I went, escaped. And then I phoned Nick, I was like, can I come home now, or do I have to say, because I only went up because it was kind of like it was an opportunity to see lots of people potentially for work and that kind of thing, so it was more colleague-y than friends leaving drinks type thing. And Nick was like, well, why don't you just go in one more time, maybe buy yourself a drink, and then if you still don't see anyone you know, then you can leave. Okay. So
What do you think of that? What do you think of backdooring it?
what does that mean?
Like when you kind of leave without saying goodbye to people?
I did that on Wednesday.
Good. I'll just backdoor it. Yeah, I'll just be like, I don't want to have to go around and say goodbye to everyone and make false promises.
Well, I said hello to everybody.
Yeah, that's fine.
That I knew, and I met some new people and chatted to them, and then you kind of like move off to a different little group. And then the last person I was talking to, who I've known for a very long time actually, and he was like, yeah, you can just sneak out. You've got a train to catch, go. So I did.
I think it's win-win in that, because if someone does see, then you've caught their eye and you can say goodbye to them. But if they don't, then, you know, no harm, no foul. It's like, because otherwise you've got to go through that interrupting conversations thing loads of times at the end, which I don't like doing in the first place. So having to then do it a second time to leave, just to be allowed to leave, I'm just going to sneak out if I can.
But also, the other nice thing about my Wednesday is because I had one thing sort of nearish to London Bridge, then I had another thing nearish to Euston, and then it was more Trafalgar Square-ish, but I walked between all of them. And it's just nice because central London, that sort of part of London, the longest walk I think was, 40 minutes from the London Bridge to the Euston appointment. That's not long or far.
No,
so I enjoyed mine. So I was a bit little bit touristy, looking around. Used City Mapper, so it took me slightly different routes that I normally walk.
Right.
So I saw some new little bits. I went, oh, that's nice little park there, that kind of thing. Oh, I didn't
It's
know
good
that
when
was there.
you still sort of. It's good when you just kind of remember you're in London and you can just kind of walk around London, and it's like, oh, London. Well, I mean, obviously you're visiting as a tourist, and I actually live
I was
here.
a tourist.
I actually really live here.
Michael,
Okay.
how are you?
Do you know, I had a little rant about the Cavanaugh thing.
Yeah.
Sorry. And going, can't we just have one thing for once? It just seemed to be going the other way. And then I just thought, I mean, we were getting a lot of those. We've been getting a lot of them going the right way for years and years and years. So a few are going the wrong way, but let's put it in perspective. A lot of things have been going the right way for a long time as well.
Plus,
and I think even the stuff that seems terrible is, I think, symptomatic of an overall growing transparency and strange sort of sense of progress. But it is where, like, stuff can just change so quickly that's the most worrying aspect of it. I see a frowny face on Ivanka.
Well, I was going to say, we totally forgot in that whole, can we just have one thing? I mean, Ireland did repeal the 8th.
Yeah, that was one thing.
That was a big thing. You know, it's not all bad.
Yeah,
for sure.
it's just, yeah. Can't we just win every time?
Yes, we want to win. We want to be winners.
Every single time.
All the time. Winning.
Also, I had a dream where the startup I was joining turned out to be funded with sort of like tax avoiding money. And in my dream, I stood to my principals and said, no, look, listen, let's pay the tax and just, it doesn't need to cost that much to build this thing. So I stood up for it in my dream. So that's quite good this morning to wake up to and realise that maybe I would do the right thing.
I am a principled human being.
I recorded a kind of like feminist song actually before the Cavanaugh recording in response to it, but it just didn't have the anger that it needed. It was just a bit too blip, 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 blip. And I was like, it shouldn't be a blip, blip, blip. It needs to have a bit more bite to it, which is not usually a problem for music I record. Usually it's too much the other way, but strange to record a song and it not feel angry enough. So, I don't know. Although I think a lot of people would listen to my output and go, most of this is quite optimistic. Actually,
Michael.
I had a thought on my bike yesterday that I just took down. We all have this idea that, you should turn off the TV, you should be alone with your own thoughts for a change, rather than just constantly distracting yourself with Instagram and Facebook and whatever it is. And it occurred to me that one of the reasons that it's annoying being left alone with your own thoughts is it always repeats. It's like, oh, I'm having this memory again. I'm having this, reliving this little bit of embarrassment again. I've seen this one. I don't need to go back here again. I want to see some new ones. For all the wonder of the human brain, it does tend to go back down the same furrows if left unattended.
Yes.
You do need to do it a bit. I had another Sunday with no phone. It didn't feel as good except it didn't feel quite as good as last time. Yeah, I think the buzz wears off after the first time.
I've done that.
Done it once, done it before. Well, this is the thing. Like, I think it's really, if you haven't done it for ages, like getting on a flight after having been working on my phone for years, and then just suddenly not having anything to do for a few minutes and getting that barrage of ideas and writing, frantically scribbling down thoughts. Then the next time you do it, you haven't got the same backlog. You haven't got the same... So, back to space.
Oh, yeah. That's what we were talking about. Space.
Have you ever been to space?
No, not recently. No, never.
No, me neither. I'd love to go. The thing about the human race, the thing about the Earth is that the Earth, once you start thinking in terms of millions and billions of years, is going to go. It's not going to be here forever. Even if we fix the climate, the sun is going to expand. It's going to engulf the Earth. The solar system is going to become engulfed. You're going to get a supernova. Maybe you'll get a black hole.
Is it going to be a champagne supernova?
Probably not. Do you know, as I've got older, I've started to appreciate like Oasis. I was always a Blur fan because I admired the technicality of it.
Right.
But actually, like in terms of sort of like life advice in emotions, I think there's probably a bit more in Oasis's lyrics than... Like Blur's were always a bit like twee and throwaway. So maybe I understand a little bit about the appeal of Oasis a bit more than I did.
I'm glad.
That's on a side.
That's one thing that we've cleared up in the space episode.
You know, you have got to roll with it. You have got to take your time.
And you've got to say what you say. That was fun.
Anyway, so look, the Earth is going to die and the universe is going to die. Either way, like it's finite. So... we're really just putting off the inevitable. So even if we can fix the Earth, at some point we're going to have, if the human race is to survive, we've got to get off here and sort of like really get into one of those cruisers, get into...
It's not going to be... It's not an urgent problem.
No, it's not urgent, but, you know, technically for us, it's not urgent to fix the climate. It's our children, it's humanity that we're caring about. You know, well, it might get a bit hot, but then, you know, how long have we got? Like, we'll be all right. It'll be quite nice here. It's the human race we're worrying about, really. Assuming Brighton's not in any danger of going under in the next few, years.
I live up a hill. I don't care.
Well, but yeah, the point is, like, eventually, we need a strategy for getting off this planet, and some scientists have been thinking about this for decades. And obviously a lot longer than that. But science has only been around for so long in its current form. But there's
There must be
the problem.
accuracy in all your statements, Michael.
It's all about accuracy.
Go on.
I imagine our audience is entirely composed of pedants, like my dad.
Or the Ubuntu community.
Well, yeah. The problem ends up being
Love you
conservation
guys.
of energy. Sorry, what was that?
I was just saying love you guys to the
Do
Ubuntu
you?
community.
Do you though?
I do.
Okay, if you say so. It's yeah.
Sorry,
Weird
you were talking about the
relationship.
heat death of the universe?
I was talking. Well, you made me start thinking about the entitlement of people getting a lot of hard work for free. Oh, sorry. Did you give your attention to something? Oh, how inconvenient for you for it not to be what you thought it was going to be. Sorry. Coming back, I'm not just talking about. There might have been maybe some feedback to our podcast. I might be thinking about there as well. It's like, oh no, is it not quite exactly how you'd like it to be? Sorry that I used 20% of the time that I could be earning money instead to do this for free. Sorry. Sorry, you were slightly inconvenienced by the free app that I made for you, that not quite behaving in the way that you imagined it should. Please send me an angry email. Cool. No, it's all about you. Sorry. I know, attention is valuable. Anyway, back to the heat death of the universe. Energy is, so we are moving towards entropy being an inevitable increase of disorder. So think of it like, you pour some milk into your tea and stir it in, you ain't never getting that milk back out. It's like that with energy. It's stored in coal, it's stored in atoms that are then fused together with nuclear fusion inside stars, and then it comes out, and then that's dissipated now, and that's going to come down to us. So yes, solar energy is great, but that's going to run out in a few billion years too. It's all got to come from somewhere. So one of the first things you hear about when scientists speculate how to sort of retain some of it is, one of the interesting things I read about was the idea of a Dyson sphere, where you basically turn Jupiter into raw materials and build a big sphere around the Earth's bit of the solar system to stop so much of the sun's energy escaping. It's like a greenhouse. So this is a project, and they thought, well, maybe that's a bit ambitious. So maybe if we just make a disk the size of Jupiter's orbit in the solar system, 483 million mile radius disk to just reflect, and that would reflect an awful lot of the sun's energy back, and then we could sort of like harness that, and that would be fine for that would sort of beat the wolf from the door for a few more billion years, but then the sun's still going to expand and eventually engulf the Earth, and we're going to have to sort of get out of here. The universe is expanding and energy is dissipating, and eventually you get to this point where it's just a sort of like cold, even spread of matter and energy, and like there's no more interesting stuff going on anymore. It's just like bleh. And we talked before about the purpose of life essentially being there's energy for the taking embedded in this coal. If you are capable of inventing fracking, there's energy for the taking. So it's sort of makes sense that the universe would have invented thing that was able to have the idea to do some fracking and hence get that energy, because the energy's there, and it's all about the flow of energy once you start thinking about these things. This is becoming a bit of a monologue. If the human race is to survive, we're going to have to sort of like start spreading out among the stars one way or another.
This is a topic on which I think, when you say something that's going to happen in a billion or a million million or million billion, I mean, that is so beyond my sphere of influence, that I just I've never been infected by the space fascination virus thing. It's like, yeah, that's all very interesting, but sort of humans in their current form have been around 10,000 years.
Yeah, 13,000 years since the dawn of farming, and about 100,000 years.
Do you know what I mean? It's like million years, 10,000, 13, 20,000. Just so, and in that time, whilst we may not have fundamentally changed in terms of
biology.
Yeah, in terms of biology, we have changed. We've learned lots of things. We do lots more things. We're quite a good little... It doesn't trigger my imagination when I start thinking about something that's billion. Perhaps I've maybe grown up enough from when from when I was 6 or 7, when it just freaked me out. It's now less freaky and more just... it's like, I could say that it's an interesting thought exercise, and I am enjoying our conversation, don't you? But I think if I'm thinking about abstract things, there's things that are more near term that I find more, maybe my frame of reference is just easier to get excited about. So I think there's something about all this that I just find like a weird distraction that people have.
What's the point of thinking about it?
Yeah.
Do you think there's a gender bias?
I don't know if it's a gender bias. I don't know.
Because you're a STEM girl.
I'm a STEM girl.
But you're still sort of, for some reason, not bothered about... Well, it's ironic that I get sort of relatively excited thinking about the incomprehensible vastness of space and time. But when it comes to, like eco-disaster and making a positive environmental impact now, it's just pure depression and loss of control.
So maybe there's more...
Maybe it's because it's safer to think about stuff on the next level up, where it's just never going to actually affect you.
Yeah, I know it's not even going to... I wonder how traceable the DNA of a person who exists when this becomes an actual imminent problem, how traceable back to us that would be. How far, I don't know, will we have actually biologically evolved by then and have...
Well, I think we're going to be modifying our forms long before. I think the next physical evolutions will not be...
biological, they'll be engineered.
Like natural selection, there will be bioengineering or kind of I think probably more likely that we just kind of Thing is, if you upload your brain, then... anything goes, doesn't it? But then that can just be turned off.
This is the thing about when you start talking... This is why space conversations are interesting. Because once you think about this future that's so far away, then all sorts of futures are possible. So your conversation, or the conversation we often have about immortality, if you define yourself as the contents of your brain, or your brain, I don't know if it's your physical brain, or like you say, download your brain... is that who you are? And therefore, if that's who you are, what does it matter what form you're living in? And whether that's bioengineered, or does it bear any resemblance to who or what you are today? But then I think what you look like today has probably had, there's a symbiotic relationship between... possibly the wrong word, between, how you look and how people look at you, that's affected your interaction with the world, that's therefore affected your brain, which therefore has affected who you are. It's like...
Yeah. And so this, the idea that you can separate the human mind from a human body is... It would never, we are defined as much by our physicality as by our brains in a lot of ways. And yes, we are capable of sort of spacing away. But there's if this is why artificial intelligence in a sort of abstract jar is never going to be able to be something that we recognize in the same way as a moving, walking around robot with consciousness. It's just going to be a different kind of thing. It's going to have different ways of interacting with its environment. Our way is... hands, eyes, kind of what comes in, and ears. If
you've biomedically engineered a body that now you're much more strong, you're much, you're resistant to flames, you can't drown, you're all these things that that's fundamentally going to change your personality. All the things that maybe even help you have empathy today, or help you learn about empathy, little children, somebody bashes them to get a toy off them, and that all those kind of things. It's like without those, without the vulnerability of our bodies, how human are we?
Yeah.
And how much are we us? Yes.
Email us, grandpodcast.com, with your answers to Ivanka's question. What was I forgot the question.
Without the vulnerabilities of our physical bodies, how human are we?
That's hello@grandpodcast.com.
Anyway, you were talking about the Earth disappearing in 1 billion years.
Yeah, so the Earth is going to disappear, and people look out to the stars and think, "Oh, I'm so insignificant to the vastness of space." You can get that vertigo just from. I think it was a common thing for you cavemen to look up at the stars and feel that vertigo of unimaginable sort of like expanse, which we're insulated from a lot more now because there's light pollution.
Yeah, but when you sleep out under the stars proper, if you go somewhere dark,
yeah,
it's still amazing.
Yeah, that's what I mean. But it used to be kind of a regular thing every night. People say, when you think about the vast expanses of time, the vast distances of space, you think, oh, well, our lives are so insignificant. But you also have the option of going the other way and going, oh, if you look at a little ant, or if you look at an atom, or if you look at sort of like a quark. How do you say a quark? Weird to say. You have the choice to imagine nanoscale stuff as well. And when you look at it that way, we're kind of in the middle. Does that make sense? Like scale-wise, humans, animals are kind of in the middle. Trees, plants, fish, sort of in the middle of that scale. And it's almost like maybe there's something interesting about this scale, about these time scales that we exist on, about just where we are in the universe, where it happens to have sort of like somehow got going. This is called the anthropic principle, which says, well, maybe we are the centre of the universe. Maybe just because something's bigger doesn't mean it's more significant. Maybe just because something's smaller doesn't mean it's less or, maybe this is the scale at which things get really interesting, and that this is huge. We are more significant than all of those stars in the sky because any one human's brain is the most complex thing in the universe that we know about. The way those neurons interact, we're not even close to understanding, whereas we can look at space and kind of go, well, that's probably you can make predictions about the future quite easily about a lot of aspects of looking up at the stars and planets. Whereas when it comes to another human being in front of you, no chance. Well, I mean, a lot of chance in a lot of ways, but, it's the most complex thing. So maybe we should give ourselves a bit more weight in that equation.
When you said anthropic, I was trying to remember something in Donut Economics where she talks about that. And in the sense that we're in a post-anthropic... Post-anthropocentric. Yeah. So it's not about humans. We now have to make it whole world-centric.
Well, no, but again, I've said this before. We don't care about the planet. We care about the planet sustaining human life and animal life. But really, we care about ourselves. Even if we think we're talking about the planet, we're talking about our ecosystem and our children.
We're wired to think. Of course, we're wired to think about ourselves.
But also, we are the first thing has ever existed, certainly on this planet, that has ever had a second thought about ransacking the natural resources available to it. We are the first thing that has ever kind of gone, oh, maybe this isn't all there is to it. So I think we need to give ourselves a break there as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean...
nothing else, no other force in the universe has ever gone, maybe I shouldn't burn all this energy that I could really easily burn.
maybe what makes us more interesting is that we fight this sort of animal instinct, natural instinct, planetary instinct to.
Well, it's because we're capable of conceiving a bit beyond what's in front of our faces, so we can actually go, oh, well, okay, this is working for now, but it's going to run out in 6 months, and then what? So maybe we should kind of like make it last.
Yeah, rein it in, delayed gratification. So, but okay, so let's say we are. Well,
the conclusion to this isn't we're doing everything right and we don't have to change anything, but it's just like, I think a lot of people talk a lot of shit about how terrible humans are, but fucking horses, they don't give a shit.
There's shit
Ants,
everywhere.
what are they doing? Trees? Come on. At least we're trying.
Ants just move things from A to B.
Planets? Fuck are they doing?
Just spinning.
Spinning there, making gas.
You started out, there's the big universe up there, and then there's the nano stuff down there, and we're in the middle, and maybe we're more important than we think. And I was like, okay. So what? How does that change our conversation about space?
I was just trying to bring a bit of optimism to the unimaginable distances and, a bit of perspective. It's not all about absolute size.
No, and
or
also
absolute time.
One can experience. So whilst I don't spend time imagining space travel and those kind of things, I get a lot of pleasure from looking up at the sky full of stars with, picking out, because I'm lucky I spend places where there is less light pollution, sometimes even no light pollution.
What?
Some of the most amazing things I've seen, I'm sure I've said this on the podcast, was looking through a telescope and seeing the rings on Saturn, or the rings of Saturn. I was like, that's not just a drawing in a book of an illustration. It's you can actually see them with my eye. I can see them, and I'm not looking through a picture or a computer screen. I'm looking through a non-computerized telescope. It's just bits of glass. So that's sort of, I can 100% get a load of enjoyment just from the sheer beauty of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty cool.
It is
It looks
really
pretty cool, especially once you start looking at those, some of those... Hubble, yeah. When you start looking at some of those, it's not just black with a few stars. It's colours. It's Guardians of the Galaxy. It looks like that. It's amazing.
It's like absolutely amazing. There is no doubt about it. There is no downplaying. It is not boring. That is not why I find it. Or it's not something I spend time on because it's boring. It's because it just doesn't, I can...
Well, it is a bit boring because it's just landscapes. There needs to be an alien running around. There needs to be a story, narrative.
I don't think so. I think that very thing that perhaps, in deep sea makes me have a panic attack, in looking up to the sky personally fills me with that feeling of awe that is a pure joy to experience. In a non-religious, just open your eyes and look up way, I think in that respect, thinking about space is amazing. Sunsets, all these things, all this light that's, regardless of how long it's taken to get here, it's all great. It's amazing to look at.
Do you ever see such a spectacular, naturally occurring phenomenon that you're like, looks fake?
No.
Okay, go on.
No, if I was looking on a computer screen, perhaps I would pause. But...
No, in real life, like, that looks fake. That water looks CGI.
No. For me, always comes visually. I think I can, if music moves me, it's a different feeling for me. It's more from...
Well, music can't get from Saturn to Earth because there's no air.
The music experience is more sort of inside out. I don't know. Whereas if I look at if something that I'm seeing with my eyes it creates this sense of awe. And I think it's noteworthy that I've got my arms wide apart and up in the air, because that's how it makes like... I was walking to the park the other day, and there's a small child in a pushchair, and it just moon in the middle of the day. Weird kids, tiny kid, 2-year-olds, moon. They can pick the moon out on a sunny day. If it shows up, they'll see it. It's quite funny that they just a random tangent.
The only thing up there.
Like,
it's the only thing up there of note.
Moon.
Boring old clouds. Music, it's funny, because music's very much about brains, about how brains work, whereas eyes and sort of seeing these amazing kind of visual phenomena is more about like what's like actually there. Yeah, I guess, and it's slightly different.
Yeah, it's much more tangible. Like, even though it isn't when it's a space, but it feels like it. So I'm not dissing space.
You're not dissing space. Well,
I'm
good.
Not dissing space
will,
because it's there and it's amazing. And I'm glad you're thinking of ways to inject optimism, because one of the things I find quite unappealing about a lot of sci-fi stuff that's set in the future is always some bloody dystopian shitty future.
Well, it wasn't always that way. But
I want pretty stories about bunnies and flowers.
Bunnies in space.
Bunnies in space.
Well, no, that was a thing that was
Peter
in my...
Peter Rabbit goes to the moon.
Well, that was in my space colonisation report, where I talked about taking rabbits up there and stuff.
Did you?
Yeah, for food. Which I thought was funny at the time, but then I was like, it's not that fun. People eat rabbits all the time. What am I on about? Anyway, little rabbit holes running around. But, I maybe we don't need to bother with all the meat once, maybe it's only for vegetarians. We don't need to waste all that land on meat.
Really, vegetarians will inherit the earth, but at some point.
You don't think it will be Mad Max-style cannibals? I mean, that's not a good source of food. If you're relying on human meat... Like, that's the bottom of the barrel in terms of convenience.
Well, how would it... Anyway, let's look at let's go back to your heat death of the universe optimism.
Inevitable demise.
Inevitable demise.
Aliens.
But maybe that inevitable demise... I mean, in the same way, how is that different to just the fact that we're all inevitably going to die? Like, I think... Isn't it our part of our purpose to sort of live the best life we can? Surely.
We are exercising the application of different perspectives, aren't we? I was going to say, we're just putting in perspective, love. We're just putting in perspective. But then I've already said there's no reason that one perspective is any better than another. So... it's interesting to exercise those different perspectives. And I even just today thinking, okay, well, if we're going to get excited about terraforming other planets, then maybe we should, if we can figure that out, then that sort of then implicitly means that we can sort the Earth out as well once we've got to that. So it gives you a bit of direction, doesn't it? A bit of blue sky, black space thinking.
Now that you've made me think about this, or I have spent the time talking to you and thinking about it, in fact, spending more time, perhaps what differentiates those people that sacrifice their lives for some sort of societal change or for something, like there are many examples of people who have given their life for something. And I think the only way you can do that is to remove the significance of your own individual existence from the... And thinking of, weirdly, the thought exercise of thinking about billions and billions of years helps do that.
It's true.
It's like, actually, you're totally relevant to the overall thing. So, you might as well give your life to this cause or put this choice over, stop worrying about your, I don't know, whether you've got the latest fashion and what you look like, and just buy enough clothes to keep warm, dry, cool, and, be kinder to the environment.
Well, what it does is, on websites, they recommend that you have 3 different prices. So like the premium one, and then the sort of normal one, and then the basic one, because of that psychological thing that people will kind of want the middle thing. Yeah. Right. It's just like space. If you make space option 3, then sort of self-sacrifice.
Yes, exactly.
It seems like the middle option now.
Inconvenience has suddenly become like, oh, well, yes, maybe perhaps I don't need all these things, and I could put a jumper on and turn the heating down, and I could, because You know, it's not about this instant feeling right now, this second of my life, or this immediate comfort. That's it, Michael. We have solved it.
I was listening to, who was saying this? I was disappointed in them. It was Marc Maron, I think. Marc Maron was sort of saying something about, the aliens, probably if they do see us now, they'll be like, there's no hope for those guys. It reminded me of, there's that amazing clip of Dan Aykroyd going, I think there are aliens, I think they're among us, but they have absolutely no interest in communicating with us, especially after 9/11.
What?
Oh, well, I mean, that's just really the last straw. But I sort of had a similar response to Marc Maron going, well, you know, that. Because if you think about, like, how would aliens see us?
Well, I used to have this, I distinctly remember having this conversation with my mate Hazel when we were about 17, walking up and down Hove Seafront, the promenade on a Sunday afternoon. Because, you know, in them days, nothing was open on a Sunday. And we were both sitting there, and she goes, do you know if aliens look down now, what would they think we were doing? It's like there is a bit of that sort of absurdity of human busyness sometimes. I think that if you think, I'm not sure they'd write us off. They'd just be looking at us going, And they sort of an alien equivalent of David Attenborough doing that sort of, and here we see.
Here we see the human being in its natural environment, making up work, spending all of their day working very hard. When you see the daily actions of the human, sitting down in rooms, talking about things together in a big group and taking notes, they go away, later they sit down, talk about things, take some notes. A few months later, we can see no evidence that any of this has made any difference, but they all look very unhappy about it. The primitive human being has not yet realised that a lot of their jobs, with the rise of automation and technology, have become bullshit jobs. And they have not reached the enlightenment that we reached long ago, focused on exploration, art, creativity, empathy, communication, and really just making sure that no one has a bad experience on our planet. Human beings still a long way to go. That's my review of the human race. That's my David Attenborough. I don't think they'd say, they'd probably bleep bullshit because they're aliens and they're more sophisticated. But no, like you wonder about it. I always used to think, I bet alien music would be really funny because it would be so different to what we were expecting. But then I sort of thought, no, because something can't be funny unless it initially sets up an expectation based on a mutual shared understanding. So alien in its purest sense feeling, it's, how do you even, let's say they're just big, that's going to be awkward. Let's say their brains work 10% faster or 10% slower. That's going to be awkward. I don't know. Let's say they communicate with visual tics rather than sound waves because they grew up somewhere without an atmosphere. Like, that's going to be awkward, but maybe a bit easier to do. That's like that last film, isn't it? With the circle aliens. Like, when you start thinking about the possible forms intelligent life could take, is there anything particularly special about our 10 fingers, 10 toes, 2 eyes? 2 eyes sort of makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
Mouth on the front, face for communicating what's inside your brain in a bit more detail.
Ears for catching quite a wide range of sounds.
Yeah, like some of it sort of
2
like...
ears to help you work out where it's coming from.
But when you look at those underwater things and you sort of see the different ways things could go, or even if you just go to Japan and go, they do things weird here. Just... like it's
Japan alien land.
I'm saying Japan is weird. No, it's just slightly different sort of like base assumptions to our base assumptions, which lead to slightly different versions of the things that perform the same task. But I suppose the communication with, and I saw someone on Facebook saying, is maths, but that would be the shared language that we would have with aliens is, okay, if you start from a certain set of assumptions, you can build out this whole world of possible equations and logical extensions to those base assumptions. And it's all the logical process there is, I think, not unique to humans at all. It's a discovery of what logic results in, or different hypotheses, and then combining that with the fact that a lot of the more esoteric, weird ideas that we've invented in maths end up applying to physics, like imaginary numbers. So the square root of -1 couldn't exist with normal numbers. So if you say, okay, well, if we have a square root, but then that turns out to help you solve some equations of some basic physics stuff, which then let you make predictions about the future, even though it's based on this. But anyway, so that's why, if you do communicate, you probably got to do it through the stuff that was there to discover, whereas music and art and culture are all pretty bound up with our particular brain structure and our history and our physical form. I don't know.
Well, you only need to change one small factor to have a very different experience or to have evolved. Like, even if they're humanoid or even if they look like us, but there's just one point of difference. Everyone bangs on about our opposable thumbs being quite handy. It's like,
vitally important.
It's like, maybe what would happen if, I don't know, they had
opposable toes.
Opposable toes. How much more could they
big
do?
Toes.
Or they had, I was going to say, extra eyes, or eyes in the back of my head. What things would be useful? I don't know.
They didn't have hair. What if they thought our hair was weird?
Well, it is kind of weird, isn't it?
Yes, I mean, a lot of things are weird when you think about them.
Yeah,
I was thinking about
very true.
I was thinking about hair in terms of a silhouette. Hair is important because it's sort of one of the ways that you create a silhouette. And we sort of we first see the silhouette, and then we see the detail after that. So I think like pop stars and people that want to be very immediately recognisable have a particular hairstyle, shape.
Oh, I see.
So that, and because you can do it with clothes as well, but it's then that gets a bit inconvenient. But the hair, that's your silhouette. That's the first thing people notice in the corner of their eye. And aliens, just because this is still about space. Yeah, aliens, I guess, still.
I am absolutely delighted by how much I enjoyed this chat. I was not expecting to. I thought I was under knowledgeable on the topic and under caring about the topic. Actually,
no, I definitely.
But sometimes I think for me, some of the conversations are more fun when I don't care as much, because then I can be a bit more relaxed and not be like, no, but listen to me and my point that I want to make. So,
well, what about
Brexit though? What about
Brexit? Well, anyway, so with that, I'm just going to go off and try and sneak into America so that I can join Donald Trump's Space Force. Space Force. Thanks for listening, everybody that listened. If you like the podcast, why not go to grandpodcast.com? Make sure you're subscribed. I mean, mainly just make sure you're subscribed in your podcast app. And if you want to email us, you can email us hello@grandpodcast.com. Where can people find you, Ivanka?
People can find me at Ivanka on Twitter.
And they can find me at michaelforestmusic.com, where there are many things that I have made. What can people do? What else can anyone do if they like it? And why should they?
What would be really nice and helpful is A, if you could tell people about the podcast. B,
Please.
If you could go, just tell somebody now, random stranger at a bus stop.
I pleased your bee.
On the train.
Yes.
Disturb a commuter.
Yeah, do it. Just don't bother. Say, what are you listening to? That sounds
See
shit.
someone over
Listen
there
to
you
this.
fancy? Go and tell them about our podcast. It's a great conversation opener. Anyway, yes, tell somebody about it. Write a review. Give us some stars. Put a little social link out there that people can click on, because people don't like to look for things. If you are going to subscribe, get hold of their phone, subscribe them, and then it's there, and they might listen to it.
Thanks for listening, though.
Thank you for listening.
We love you. We love you. We love that you're listening. I love that you're listening. I find it. I still think it. Yeah, I find it weird that I feel like this is people that are listening to Ivanka's podcast, and I am incidental to it in my mind. But that's not true.
That's
is it?
how I think of it too, as much.
So there we go. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye. Bye. Bye.
Bye.